Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So we've got, what is this, your third time being on the podcast now, John?
I think that's right.
So returning guest powerhouse in the analytics space. So what have you been up to since we last touched base?
Yeah, I love that question. I think the first time we connected, I was in an analytics manager role. The second time we connected, I was in a data science manager role. And very recently, I have continued the momentum and have moved into a product management manager role within the same broader group, still in Home Depot and still working very closely alongside my analytics and data science friends who I would be wildly ineffective without. And of course, I have not forgotten SQL or statistical tests or how to design an experiment or how to do difference and difference or anything like that. But I am trying it out to have a front row seat to let's make for whatever we're working on within the product space.
Awesome. So to get you up on kind of where we're at now, so I launched an apprenticeship program about 6 months ago, and we've been beta testing through the rest of the year. Who you're going to be talking to is one of my apprentices who is interviewing for his first managerial role. And then if we have time, we're going to jump into a Q&A with the rest of the cohort. So it's a 3-month program where the students actually get to work with one of my clients. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull on German here. Let me rearrange this. German.
Hello.
So you've got some news. So you just went through your first phone screening for your first managerial role. How did that go?
I did. It was good. It was. I appreciate the prep work that we did beforehand, because the way that I was initially preparing for it before you and I met was very typical to how I normally prepare for interviews, and it became very clear during this initial phone screening just how different it is to interview. Even the interviewing process is different from interviewing for a senior analyst role or even an analyst role to interviewing for a managerial role. A lot of open-ended questions, situational answers, and I just would love the opportunity to talk a bit more about how some of those soft skills, or really just the day-to-day moves, are different as a manager opposed to as a senior analyst.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's a great. Let's kind of frame up the conversation, or I guess for this first kind of talking point of, John, what is the difference between mindset of being a senior analyst and a manager?
Yeah, this is a super loaded topic, which I'm looking forward to diving into. One small housekeeping item: I'm sharing perspectives that are mine and exclusively mine. I'm not sharing the perspectives of Home Depot. Always just like to say that up front. Forgot to say that at the beginning, but please make sure that if this gets edited, that remains in there. And then with the housekeeping out of the way, the simple answer is some of these things will sound cliche, but like as a leader of the team, or in like the leader title, right? The manager, I am responsible for the outcomes and results of the team. And I feel responsible for the success of the individual contributors, not in a patronizing way, I feel responsible for their success. So if they have barriers, if there are training gaps, if there are knowledge gaps, I feel responsible to try to help address them. If they already have the awareness that those opportunities exist, then they're easier to address. If they don't have the awareness yet, then you do the change management to drive the awareness of, like, someone might think they're really strong in SQL or Tableau, and they're not kind of compared to the market expectation, or maybe some of the other people delivering results. But an even simpler, more concise answer: as an individual contributor, you basically get assigned projects. Like the work stream is much more like rigid and clearly defined. On the in the manager role, on the leadership side, you are potentially trying to find the best things to work on, and even thinking about in a scenario where you have multiple direct reports. You're trying to figure out who might be who is best suited to work on this. How might it stack with the other things they're doing? Maybe who is least well suited to do this, but we want to help the team become more well-rounded, right? Or maybe someone who's really strong in one area is you know what? I'm tired of just cranking out Tableau dashboards. I'd really love a chance to help design an experiment and think about, how can we do some A/B testing here? And then you kind of consider that as you're trying to plan the work. And if you want to get really, really good at this, and it's much harder to do, and I don't even know if I can do this well ever, but 6 or 7 people who have worked at Home Depot know I've tried. Let's bring the team into the planning process even more and earlier, even though it's more difficult than everyone thinks.
Okay, so German, so we had a coaching call right before his interview to kind of get him prepped. I've been reflecting on that conversation we had, and it brings to mind this concept called Peter's Principle. Have you heard of that?
I'm not privy to knowing Peter's Principle.
Okay, so Peter's Principle is like a work site concept of people often get promoted to their level of incompetency. So if you're a good analyst, you get promoted to mid-level. If you're a good mid-level, you get promoted to a senior level. And then you stop progressing up the ladder till you're at a position where you're just not good at the job. And then it kind of goes off. It's an interesting concept because what makes a good entry-level analyst doesn't necessarily make a good senior-level analyst.
Mm-hmm.
So John, and let me this is a loaded question, so feel free to eviscerate this opinion of mine. I think hard work gets you to a manager role. I think that hard work is no longer what's essentially measured once you're in management. It's more a measurement of your good judgment. So you're not actually boots on the ground doing the work. But if you have 1 ounce of better judgment on how you're running your team, that can result in, a ton more wins for the team.
Oh, yeah, I don't hear anything to eviscerate from
Okay.
my perspective. Yeah, and what I wrote down was I just wrote down get stuff done, right? So an individual contributor role, you're trying to complete the projects on time or early. It's kind of a common practice. What I've observed that people don't do as much as I wish they did while in individual contributor roles is still actively thinking about why did they assign me this project? Don't work on it if you don't understand why. And if you do understand why, that project alone might be a stepping stone to something else, or that there might be something right next to it that's just as valuable, right? Imagine a hypothetical where one of John David's clients is asking you to figure out where they're the next sales opportunities. We think it's in this region, or we think it's this product line. You might come back and go, actually, it's not that product line. It's protecting share on this other product line that you didn't even ask me about, but I noticed that it's been declining despite I found this data that helps estimate the overall market size. You're declining while the market's growing. That doesn't seem right. And then I think it's because you're I looked at your competitors' price points. I'm just making this up, of course, but we found this other thing that we think helps you get more of what you want sooner. Now you have to first, in an individual contributor role, you have to first be, meet the expectation, meet the request. But nothing is stopping you from applying curiosity, hustle, and trying to put yourself in the shoes of the person who assigned you the project to try to find something better. Right. I always tell the team it's the Steve Jobs fortune cookie of we hire smart people not to tell them what to do, but so they can tell us what to do. But sometimes you kind of get to tell us what to do after you've worked on what we've asked you to do.
Yeah, definitely so. So if you don't mind me asking, for yourself, was when you made that shift over from senior analyst to manager, was it internal, or did you come into Home Depot already as a manager?
So I would say I returned to Home Depot 3 years ago, already with management experience, and had a few different chances in what I would say is lower scale, lower stress environments to begin developing those skills. So it wasn't I can kind of reflect on what was it like to go from individual contributor to leader of a team. However, it was to an extent a gradual process. I will say that through some fortunate networking in Home Depot, I have had the chance to basically get to mentor some newer team, like newer managers, right? And then just kind of asking them questions, what's working, what's not working, so I can be like, I can really empathize with it in that respect. But for me, it's been a while ago, and it's kind of like a gradual thing. So I can't answer for, look, with that disclaimer out of the way. The hardest thing to do is stop being the individual contributor, and the hardest thing, and it is the stereotypical thing, but there's a reason that it's so common. You think you can do it yourself faster, but that is not the job. The job is to empower the people who are on your team to do it themselves faster. So if you do it for them, you are stealing it from them. If you do it for them enough, you're creating learned helplessness. And then if you do it for them enough, they won't do it for them. They won't do it for themselves ever. And you're the problem, not them. Like, that's a little bit intense, but the difficulty is realizing that you're not a player anymore. You're the coach, right? And
Right. So in the conversation, me and German kind of role played some like open-ended questions, like, tell me about yourself. And his first kind of gut instinct was, well, I'm a really hard worker, and, I'm like boots on the ground. I like, grinding on things. And as you get higher up into an organizational structure, the less and less of that you do. And I don't necessarily think saying I'm a hard worker is going to detract from being, a good manager. I think it does take hard work, but that's almost like table stakes. Like, that gets you to the game. Then it's like, all right, well, how thoughtful are you? Now, how good are you at growing people? Because John, that's something I'm struggling with now too, is that I'm bringing on a third employee, and I feel like I can do everything like better and faster than the people I'm training. But it's like, well, of course, because this is my baby, this is my company, but I can't manage everything. So I'm having to do the sales, marketing, operations, and that is a lot trickier than I think a lot of people realize, because you've got to delegate, and I think that's a tough one right there.
Yeah, there's prioritizing the work. There's having like good approaches and paradigms for how to prioritize. Then there's the strategic thinking of even knowing what things to put in the list to consider prioritizing, right? Like, you have to go wide enough and broad enough at first to make sure that you have a chance of being effective, right? Effective, working on the right things, and then efficient, I'm pretty sure, is just doing them well, doing them as close to as fast as you can as possible. So yeah, maybe we zoom in a little bit on developing other people. Because if you're not in a manager role, it can often feel like, to get in a manager role, I have to have already been in a manager role, because they're going to never, like, maybe as a future senior manager, when I'm thinking about who I might hire as a manager, it really helps to have to work with someone to bring in someone who already has that experience, because there are growing pains, and you don't want your managers to just be overpowering individual contributors, because they will frustrate their teams, right? So it's what you can do as you're preparing for interviews is try to have really compelling examples of how you've already invested in the people around you to make them better. And keep in mind that investing in a peer who has a project, maybe helping them out a little bit extra here and there, is different from being responsible for the outcomes of their work, and like clearing the blockers as they come up, and having to occasionally give difficult feedback of like, I was expecting you to get to here and you're only here right now, and like making sure they agree and understand that I've been involved in the process, and then inviting and challenging them to keep going. But I would say, like, maybe we stick with growing. Like, how do you grow other people? So in an interview, if you're trying to make the case that you're ready to lead a team, maybe you should be thinking about what makes a high performing team. Maybe you should be thinking about examples of things you've done, or at least teams you've been on, right? Hey, look, let me describe what it's the highest performing teams, or the best functioning teams that I've really thrived in. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that environment and the things that I saw the leaders doing that I know are going to be part of my style right away. And I want to make sure that lines up with the leadership style of this team I'm going to. That's another thing that takes time. And even some of the people who I've interviewed have been like shocked by how bold they are, and basically saying what they're looking for and what they're expecting, right? So I don't know if that will work in every interview setting, and but that would work if I was there and you were saying what you actually want. So it's like, maybe the highest performing teams I've ever been a part of, the leaders always involved me very early in the strategic decision-making process. They showed me what the timeline was. They showed me what they had in mind already. And then they asked me, and they gave me some time to have input, right? So I'm
Mhm.
describing like a strategic planning process where the leadership side involved me. That is very important to me, and the teams that I'm a part of, I always try to involve the team and say, look, like it's towards the end of 2022. I imagine people are wondering what is most important in 2023. Do you want to wait for them to ask us? Be concerned that they didn't ask us, or do you want to already have a developed perspective so that we can volunteer and say this is what we think we should do next year?
Yeah, I think I really like what you said there about leadership being involved in the strategic planning process very early on. Because I mean, maybe we can talk a little bit about this. About I'm curious to know how you hit the ground running when you moved from one. I mean, you moved internally, so it's not like jumping industries. But when you move managerial roles from one role to another, I kind of find that similar to a bit of what I might be doing, which is I'll be moving, I would potentially be moving companies from my current role to in a completely different industry and as a new manager. And so one of the things that I really want to be keen for is having a hit the ground running strategy, and not just in like I understand that there will be a little bit of growing pain there, but having a plan of some best practices for how to set expectations, key markers to look out for in terms of development. Any of that advice would be definitely helpful in your first even the first 3 months of being a manager for a new team.
So first, it is a good idea to create like a 30, 60, 90-day plan or whatever the timelines are. That just, sounds like a triangle, but it's a simple, like it's a kind of just an accepted practice, right? So this is in the first X number of days in that first period, I'm listening, asking questions and observe like basically observing and absorbing as much as I can. And then over the next time period, I'm starting to kind of socialize a few ideas of ways that I think we can get better, or maybe do a little more of this, a little less of that other thing. And then maybe in like the third phase or the 60 to 90 days, I pick the top one or two and try to get some momentum on that. I will say that it's likely tempting to start trying to change too much too soon, especially when you're in a newer role and if you're not used to more of the consensus building. So like most people like to work on their own ideas more than they like to work on your ideas. So and then hopefully I'm not telling all of my secrets. And if any of the people I've gotten to hire in the past are listening to this, I will explicitly say I'm doing this on purpose, right? I want to know what's important to you. I want to understand it better. And then my strong preference is just to be able to go do that, right? And I don't want to have my own ideas. I just want to implement your ideas. Now, if you as an individual contributor on the team I'm a part of have an idea that I really don't think will work or is like in direct conflict with what we're trying to do, then we'll kind of explore through that together. But like point one is have a 30, 60, 90 and bias towards listening and watching before you start taking action. Because if you're a hardworking individual contributor, like just to steal a book from Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here will not get you there. Like it will not work. And
I literally said that in our call.
Yeah.
And you might, and you hinted at it, like it's a whole book. Like if someone who has an amazing career wrote an entire book about it, it's a good one. The next, so I kind of I kind of sprinkled in my two other partial answers, which is just listen more and tell people I'm listening more on purpose. And like, don't be fooled. I have a perspective on what we should do. I have a few things that I've seen work really well that I'm going to be tempted to incorporate here. But before I start skipping steps, you might have tried that once or twice. You might already have that. You might even have implemented it better than I've ever seen it before. And I was about to change something and make it worse because you already do it better. But I can't know that yet. So that's why I'm just going to try to go to as many meetings as I can. And I'm going to listen within the team. I'm going to listen to our stakeholders. And of course, new company, like I got a whole new culture to learn. And that's, that is easy to underestimate, right? Of like, how do they do stuff? How do the cross-functional groups work together? And then the last one that I kind of hinted at is tell the team I'm a blank slate. I'm expecting you to try to influence me to want to do certain things. There's nothing wrong with that. That means you care, right? So as you're helping me understand what do you think as a team we should do more and do less of, you can be subtle or you can just tell me. And if you tell me, I'll have a running list and I'll be writing them down and I'll be comparing it to what I'm experiencing, maybe some of the heads up that the immediate leadership team has given me, maybe some of the pre-research I've done, and asking other teams, hey, what's it like to work with this team, right? you can just explicitly ask your new team, like, what is our brand right now? What is our reputation? What are we known for? What are we not doing that people wish we were doing? Are there any other models of the type of work where, like, are there other teams? If it's a big company, are there other teams that also do analytics or data science or product management? And of course, there are lots of them.
Yeah.
That was a lot, but trying to kind of leave
You
time
get
for
thoughts.
Q&A.
I appreciate them.
No, you definitely give a lot of food for thought, especially as you give some answers. I can definitely see a little bit of insight into your management style. It seems like you very much like to include your team on when it comes to getting their ideas and having a genuine interest in the projects that we're most likely going to empower them, because it's ones that they've typically brought up, and seeing how you can get approval while also keeping business objectives in mind and seeing how you can merge the two. When you went about developing your management style, I guess, how did you go about uh, deciding on that, whether it was organic or through structured learning of, like, either through LinkedIn courses for management styles or just something that you developed through mentorship and learning?
I love the question. So I would say we're of course shaped by our experiences to an extent and by the people we admire. So I would think they sometimes say you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's silly. You can't possibly be the sum of them, but maybe you're the average, or maybe you're one standard deviation below the average. But you do start to turn into the people that you spend a lot of time with. So being thoughtful of who you spend time with, of like, I admire that person for their character, for how they solve problems, how they approach their team, for their track record of success here. Like, go find the people and say, I'm newer in this role. You look like you're really good at this. I think I could learn these 1 or 2 things at least. Like, I've noticed you being particularly good at this particular thing that I don't think I'm good at. Do you have time for the little people like me? I would I promise that I will track and try to implement what you teach me, and I will tell you how well it went after, and I will reinvest it in other people. I promise to try to do those things. Now, that is a little bit different than getting like spammed messages on LinkedIn, right? That's very customized, right? Like, John David, you're particularly good at this specific thing. I want to learn this from you. Do you have time? Like, will you teach me? And then if you teach me, I will try. I promise to try to do this, this, and this as a result of it. And I will tell you about it. And I will go try to help 2 other people with it. Like, that's hard to say no to. But the other thing, it's not only the people and having a good way to ask them. It's also like your problem solving approaches. So I take for granted, my undergrad is in economics, right? Economics is a way of thinking, and it's like opportunity cost. I'm not great at it. I'm not always great at communicating it, but I am intuitive, and I do consider opportunity cost, trade-offs, and everything. Like, all 3 of us, it's like after 4 on a Friday, we all did an opportunity cost calculation and decided this was more valuable than the alternative. And my alternative might have been like continuing to research something that I think may have lots of commas, although I always do. Or the alternative might be going to play golf, right? So, like, just being able to apply like common sense economic concepts is good. And then this is where, like, the purist data scientists will likely make fun of me for this, but to bring it on, it's like the scientific method, and like data science is just taking the scientific method and applying it to data, right? And then I think good product management is likely the same thing, just with some additional really good design thinking concepts in place, and like more of a focus on empathizing with the customer. But now I know I just jumped off course, but I am answering the question of like, what makes my management style the way it is. It's considering many different disciplines, trying to take the essence and the best parts of them and combine them in a way that suits the situation. So gold rat's the goal: design thinking, product management best practices, scientific method, ADKAR for change management. I am trying to borrow those components to have to be versatile and be able to be useful in a variety of different situations. And that versatility makes me useful to lead different types of teams, I hope, and I think I'm demonstrating. And then it also makes me able to customize my leadership style to individual contributors. So if it's like different domains, variety of problem solving approaches leading to high level of customization, I interact differently with each of the people who I'm like whose outcomes I'm responsible for, who I consider myself to work for to help them be successful. Right?
Yeah, we talked exactly about that. I broke it down into a metaphor of like granularity. Like the data gets more granular, like, a pebble of sand all the way up to like a massive boulder. You're going up a level. Like if you're an individual contributor, you might spend, all 80% of your week, mired in the data. But you're as a manager, you're probably communicating to the executive team or at least a mid-level team. They want high-level business, like is our sales up, our costs down, is margin good? You start thinking about it from like a zoomed out view, like, instead of getting hyper specific. And this is something that I see a lot of people do. Almost everybody that I'm coaching right now gets a little bit too specific when they're answering these open-ended questions. So like kind of starting your responses with the high level view of what's at play. Are we doing sales analysis? Are we doing marketing? What is the business objective? And I think you could read business books on that. But I think the best way to kind of build business acumen is go and work.
I think, well, I think go and work is definitely one of them, but I think perhaps on the other side of that too is exactly what you were doing, which is asking yourself some questions beforehand. Like as you're going through the data and as you're creating a visualization, really asking yourself the questions of like, who is it at the end of the day, who is this for? And my question to the group here being, that's kind of one of the points that I'm trying to one of the habits I'm trying to break from moving from senior analyst to management is moving away from the granularity to going to the high level. And usually for me, those questions kind of come at the visualization part when I'm putting my recommendation together, and then I'm asking myself like, okay, who is this report going to? But on just a daily basis, what are some of the guiding questions or guiding lights that you all ask yourselves to not spend 2 hours of your day going down a rabbit hole of Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics to get a very specific question answered? Like, how do you even just like put that question out of your mind to focus on a bigger picture?
So you know what I do? Since I've become like, I'm starting to manage multiple people, I go to the gym and I listen to classical music and walk around the track. I go completely analog. Like I'm not in front of my computer, just like being bombarded with, like text and that hit a dopamine. I am just sitting there, and I almost like just daydream, and then I kind of let, because it's like multiple things that I'm trying to digest at a time, and then I just focus on like it's almost like walking meditation.
Yeah.
Just like feel it relax, like just relax and just like kind of let it out. I know that's a little hippy dippy woo woo. John, what's your strategy on that?
So there are gonna be two answers: why and outcomes, right? So I want to make sure that I am connected, like that I understand the why for my career, and even better, Simon Sinek, Just Cause. And I'm just like a walking parrot of this, but like make sure you understand the just cause that you want your 40 hours a week, your 2,000 hours for over 30 years, your 60,000 hours of your life. It better be going towards something that's worth it, or you'll run out of energy, so make sure you know why, and ideally, do the master's class also and get to the just cause. So it is much easier. And then you need to know your own why. You're better off knowing your team's why, your org's why, your company's why, and being able to quickly telescope and connect those. So I think I know what Home Depot's why is. I think I know what the team's why is. I certainly know
that was German's homework.
Oh, good.
Because I asked him, hey, tell me about yourself. And I was like, you need to come up with a personal why statement. That's so funny that we've got like parallel thinking there. German, hot seat.
Oh, and then
Tell me
the other piece of how to know what to work on is you need to be able to rapidly triage or estimate what you think something might be worth, and that is loaded because there are many different ways to estimate things, and there are many different. Like it's not just dollars; it could be productivity, it could be opportunity cost, it could be risk reduction. It actually can't be that many things, and I think there are only 4. But you still want to be able to estimate the outcome ahead of time and be faster at that. And then if people are asking you to do 10 things, and for 2 of them, you're very confident that you can estimate the outcome and it looks pretty good, you should probably do those first. For 2 of them, if you're like, I don't think there's ever a way to measure this, and I'm concerned that this is going to just take up a lot of time, you should just say to the person who's asking, I don't yet see a way to measure this. I'm not able to connect this to the things that the team has signed up for the year, and I don't have enough information to recommend that this cuts in line. So like and then this is something I need to keep working on, and I think I have great leadership to keep me driving down this path. But our ability to skillfully say why we're saying no. I don't like to say no. I prefer to tell people what I need to say yes. So I might say, I don't have enough to say yes yet. Here's what I would need to be able to say yes. Or like you overestimate my decision making, like my authority. I can't decide that, right? But here's what the people who I think could decide would need in order for them to say yes and for me to then get to say yes.
Very
Definitely
cool.
so.
All
Thank
right.
you. Appreciate that.
So while we've got German here, let's close out kind of this loop. And once we get past this question, I got one paid chat question that we can pull in, and then I'll pull in the other students for Q&A. So German, I hope you flushed out your why statement, because we're putting you in the hot seat and John's going to give you some feedback. So what's your personal why statement?
My personal why statement. So before I get a personal why statement, I first had to reflect on what are the big projects that I've done in my career thus far, and why of those many projects that I've been given, why those specific projects came out to be such, for lack of a better term, such bangers. Like I really like put in the extra effort for those ones, and I thought about like if I had 5 other projects going on at the time, why did I devote extra time, energy, and attention to these ones opposed to others? And it's because I have a deep fascination and interest in the intersection between psychology and business in the form of conversion rate optimization. To be able to I really appreciate being able to match a website's user experience with the user's intent, and being able to dive further into that with latest and greatest personalization, and being able to match even further intent with experience. That's my why, for why I've continued to gravitate towards conversion rate optimization in the marketing web funnel.
Awesome. All right. So you used a lot of what I gave you in that call, but it's good though. I like it. John, I'm curious your thoughts.
All right, it's tempting to be brutal here. The way this works is whoever goes first just like gets hit the hardest. So I will avoid doing that, because if I shared mine, which I don't even have prepared, and I've never I've written the Just Cause. I believe the Infinite Game, like Simon Sinek's book, says what his Just Cause is and invites other people to adopt his Just Cause. So you don't have to individually invent one. You can just use this one. I believe what Simon Sinek's Just Cause is in his book, The Infinite Game. That's what I tried. That's not my why. That is the Just Cause that I bought into. With that out of the way, and this is not brutal, but this is sort of just going to be difficult on purpose. So the intersection of psychology and business for conversion rates and like the user and user intent were some of the things that I wrote down. Does that include making it easier for people to buy illegal drugs on the internet? Because in listening to that statement, it does include that. I'm sure that is not important to you, and you're probably opposed to that. However, like your why statement would make it possible for you to work on the intersection of psychology and business, increasing the conversion rates of people, buying things that are harmful to themselves and communities based on most people's opinion, including mine. So that's one small critique. It's just, and this is always the difficulty, right? It's the same challenge for companies of like, how does your mission vision statement not go so generic that it's just like improve things, but then how do you not go so specific that it kind of handcuffs you down a particular path? So I'm better at critiquing than I am at creating in this particular type of thing. But you could stress test your why using that. Like, what if someone tried to break it? Like I just tried to break it. Does it still work?
Yeah.
Well, I see your point. Although I would say the why statement in this context is it's a framework for you to talk about yourself more effectively, because most people just ramble. Like his German, I'll be brutally honest, you rambled too much in your first tell me about yourself, which is good though. So we kind of like, we like pulled it in, put some reins on it. I think you're right. The why, like that, they could be stronger, but I think it's that just having a why statement for an about me question, or like tell me about yourself, it puts you at answering that question probably like the 99th, 95th percentile.
Oh,
responses.
Very good context reminder. Like most
Yes.
people have not thought about it at all, don't have an answer at all. And then
Right.
if any of the people who have messaged me on LinkedIn, who, if you customize a message, I will reply. And I just ask you the same questions. You're saying you potentially want to work somewhere, you want to get help with this type of thing. Why do you want to do it? What impact do you want to have on the world? And why should I believe you? And then it's like, and this is just my version of creating a funnel, because none of us can answer everything everyone asks. So what happens? Yeah. So don't hear this wrong. Like, it's good that you're preparing. It's good that so maybe it's the intersection of psychology and business to increase conversion rates for products that are eco-sustainable, right? Or increase conversion rates for, like, to make education more available globally now that the internet, despite socioeconomic status is differing globally, like the internet has mainstreamed that more. Or maybe it's like, I'm just making this up, right? But what you actually care about. So you can, and now of course you want to customize it to the role you're looking at, but those things that you care about more than the person next to you, just because I have life experience or whatever that got you there, you try to include that in the interview process. So, like, I won't share all of my things, but one of the things I believe in, like Carol Dweck's like fixed versus growth mindset. I think everyone has a growth mindset. Yeah. Some people have not been invited to remember that they have a growth mindset, so they operate as if they have a fixed mindset. So it's to challenge people to realize they're more capable than they already are, and that's why How to Get an Analytics Job aligns so much with what I care about, right? Because people might feel a little bit stuck in their career, and it's like, oh, you can get unstuck. You can learn enough SQL in 6 months to start down this really cool path, and then all these things can happen.
I mean, I don't mean to flex on everybody, but I think I got a pretty solid why statement.
Oh,
it's to help you get an analytics job. I mean, right there. I literally titled the podcast, and then it's right. Yeah.
And then just part of always being a pain is like, isn't that a what, not a why?
What?
How to get an analytics job is a what, not a why. Getting a job is a what. That's a thing.
Well, we are on a podcast right now, and that's the why of the podcast. Is how I'm teaching you how to get an analytics job. Why are you listening to this? To get an analytics job. Why am I talking to a manager? And it is a why. I'm pushing back on that. But moving on. So we got Drewski 501 asked, do you have any advice for a regional manager that wants to switch careers into data analytics or data science? I think, John, you've already kind of hit on this a little bit, but if you wanted to elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think because this is definitely different than the management question. So John David just showed you how to skillfully put a topic in the parking lot and maintain momentum, which I observed and appreciated and admired. So for the regional manager, it is start doing the work right away. There are unlimited options, including, like, I'm sure How to Get an Analytics Job has some cool case studies that you could start working on. In fact, I know they do. So that's one option, is just start doing it in the smallest, simplest way possible. And there are 20 choices. So look at 2 or 3 and just pick the first one, or look at 2 or 3 and pick the third one. Like, it does not matter, but it's easy to get overwhelmed and not start. So if you have the math degree, the SQL won't be that hard. It's matrix algebra is more difficult than SQL by far, like, once you understand the mechanics of it. But it is start doing it, and then is try to get plugged into some community where you can start to get your loosely associated inner circle. So you're going to get stuck and you're going to get frustrated, and if you have no one who you can ask, you're just going to opt out. So also try to go on the path with a few people.
Well, so that's how we started structuring our program, is that we have group calls moving in January to be 5 days a week. You'll get to meet with me on Monday. You'll get to meet with an analytics manager on Tuesday, Kadisha Bryan doing marketing on Wednesday, Thursday, Hunter. And then on Friday, we're going to do these podcasts, live streams. And then, so it's that cohort. So I guess, Drewski, you could potentially sign up for either my career services or the apprenticeship program. But John, I think you did it, without. Well, did you have a background in analytics before you went back? So it might have been easier for you.
Yeah. So I mean, from SQL standpoint, like I first learned SQL at Home Depot in like 2013, and was air quotes self-taught, but really, the people who I always end up shouting out when I go on podcasts, I will just decide not to do that today. They're probably tired of me doing that. But like a few people just gave me a little bit of extra time. I did some work, asked them questions. But one other follow-up for the regional manager is, and this is just stealing from someone named Cassie from Google, who calls like is a chief decision scientist and is one of the most annoyingly like effective communicators I've ever seen. Just says like everybody's an analyst to begin with, and I'm like, oh, I just have to steal the people who are
Right.
smarter and better, who have already figured this out. And it's like, yeah, so this regional manager person, use like you can apply analytics, and you probably are intuitively
Right.
when you're making trade-off decisions right now. Just see if you can find some additional data or get going, and even just say to yourself, what data would I need to be able to make an even better decision in this type of situation? Starting to think that way can help a lot, right? Or like if there are apps, where's the app leaving data? If there are customers interacting on a website, where's the clickstream data? If there's, I don't know, like machines driving around, do we know when they were like, are they connected into a network? When was the machine turned on? When was it turned off? Does it have like some kind of radar? I don't like, just like think about, for anything you're looking at, might there be a data footprint that could be useful, and what would you want to know and how would you use it?
Great answer. All right, so I'm going to pull all the students in. So I'll warn you, Corey here is a Home Depot superfan. So Corey, I know you've got questions because Home Depot is. Oh, Corey, I think you're muted.
I am. Thank you for having me. I am a Home Depot super fan, so that's it's definitely my favorite place to shop and one of my favorite places to be. So as far as that goes, that became one of my top priorities as far as in the job search, as far as that goes. So I've kind of been studying for a while and just started putting in applications. And yeah, so I'm on my way, and yeah, just a huge fan of Home Depot. Spend a lot of time there, definitely.
I've got a question. So didn't you brand one of your resumes with Home Depot colors?
I did. I just did that recently.
Is that too much? Is that too much?
And that's specifically for Home Depot applications, and that's going forward. So yeah, I'm pretty into Home Depot. Would you like to see it, John?
Sure. Feel free to pull it up.
Sure. 1 second.
And then while you're doing that, I would encourage, as you if you're seriously considering different roles at Home Depot, you have like formal and informal channels to network. It is a good idea to be as specific as you can about which particular departments you might want to go work in, because large company, and this is not specific to Home Depot, large companies have so many different teams you could work on that it can be difficult to even know which roles to start applying for, or where to informally network to. Like I'm one person in a 500. I don't even know how many people in like last corporate earnings call. Maybe they mentioned it, but like this stuff's public. There are hundreds of thousands of people who work in Home Depot across the country. I don't know how many people are in the corporate, in the store support center, the main office, but it's like probably in the thousands. So there are just so many different teams. I don't even know how many people have an analyst role, but they're just analyzing things that can be incredibly wide. It almost feels like every type of job exists here.
Very
So
cool.
being more specific in what you might already know, but like make sure you're specific. You're saying, I'm considering these few different departments, and here's why. And I like this one because they do this specific thing that I've cared about for a while. Or like, I want to be a merchant one day. I want to help pick the best assortment of products, and I like to build stuff with these type of tools, and I like to build this type of thing. And I always I build custom like lawn chairs for everyone in the neighborhood, and I've been doing that for 10 years. Like try to find some story that resonates, that makes you stand out, and then gets people interested, because it is very, very competitive, particularly early on.
Gotcha.
All right.
But like you didn't ask any questions. You just shared that you like Home Depot. And I kind of shared.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving you a hard time at all.
I think he's starstruck, honestly.
A little
He's
bit.
like,
there are no
Ooh.
stars, and there's only one celebrity on this call.
All right.
All right. So Corey's got a background and he's worked 3 years as a financial analyst and then 1 year as an accountant, right?
Correct.
And then you also own multiple properties, and that's why you're so tied in with Home Depot. I think you've got a really compelling narrative to
Correct.
show up in an interview for Home Depot.
I think if I did get the opportunity to interview, I think I would crush the interview. And kind of part of the thing that led me into analytics is I can tie back into Home Depot in the regard that when I started buying properties and when I started rehabbing properties, I had no idea how to do anything and pretty much kind of taught myself through YouTube. And so with that, when I learned that I could teach myself things and that nothing's really too far out of reach, it's not that I can't do it, it's that I haven't learned to do it yet. Once I realized that, I gained confidence in my ability to learn, and then also my passion with analytics. It just kind of was a clear path for me. And so I traveled down the path of learning, and I don't really have too much fear about learning or fear about failure. So I just keep pushing on. And that's something that has come with renovating houses and learning. But I'd love to share my resume for a second, just so you can let me know how it looks format-wise, or if you're impressed by the colors.
Oh, wait, we can't see it.
Okay, 1 second. I'm going to share.
Oh, and then while you're pulling it up, I would be informally and not seriously willing to side bet anyone any amount of money that your resume describes what you did and maybe how you did it, but it does not include why, and it does not include dollar impacts of the activities, and does not include percentage benefits.
John, you're wrong.
All right, but I
because they're under my tutelage.
I would love to be wrong.
They're under my tutelage.
Yeah,
and that is number one thing that we talk about
percents and dollars.
Quantify your impact, because that is step one of rebranding yourself and getting either a promotion or transitioning into the space. Is you've got to tally up all your wins, turn them into dollars and cents if possible. That's the best rank order. Then percentages if you can't, get dollars and cents. Then we run them through situation, task, action, result of how to tell those stories. Nice. Richard, Scott, you got what, $1 million story under your belt?
Yes. I was working as a fraud analyst at Chase, and I was not thinking about I did that much impact. And then when I think back, it's just every button we click, we basically save money for the bank. Yeah. I wouldn't realize that if John didn't, remind me about that.
Right. But John, you bring up a great point about that of people don't realize to quantify the impact of the work they've done. They feel like, oh, I'm basically an order taker. They're telling me what to do. They're the ones who are reaping the benefits. But you're the one who are boots on the ground, like getting things done. And I mean, I've noticed it with Richard. I mean, we've been working together for 3 weeks? Like your confidence level has skyrocketed by like 500%. Like it's really, really cool to see. And you've also landed your first offer too. So
yeah,
there you go.
Thank you very much. I never thought I could got into this step, like sitting in the podcast and just talking with you guys. That is something I never thought I could do one day. And here I am.
Yeah, well, this kind of gets back to the conversation with German around being a good manager. It's kind of pushing people outside of their comfort zone a little bit. You don't want to push them so far that they break or they have a mental breakdown or they just like quit, but just like incrementally, like, because Richard, you pushed back and asked for a higher offer, which is something you said you never would have thought in a million years you'd do that.
Right. I was.
Oh, he's frozen. I was like, he's thinking really deep. All right. Well, he's thinking about that.
Hey, good timing.
Yeah. So let's see, Corey, you're not making, I can see a 22% increase or something already because it's really small on my screen. But John, to your point, I don't think he has much why in there. That's something that I'll admit.
Correct.
I haven't really thought.
And then to do one annoying, like I want to call it a falsification test, even though I don't think it is. But so analyzed financial statements and presented findings along with recommendations to the parish stakeholders. I like the recommendations part. like what were the recommendations, what was the scale, and did they do them right? So it might be instead like the stakeholders implemented a $250,000 recommendation, cost savings like initiative that I helped them find doing, but whatever you did. So often people will say what they did first, and even if they're putting the benefit, they put the benefit at the end, but it's like open with the hook. And then, so so 30K, like reduce, maybe the second one instead says reduce 30K reduction, like reduced expenses by 30,000, and then it says how after, but like open with the answer.
Gotcha.
Right.
And and John David, I am not critiquing you indirectly through this, and my resume is worse than this.
No, I agree.
But I am like always put the best stuff up front, and that way someone just glances at this, oh, 30,000, wow, I would like to save $30,000, and then 10% better, and recommended an exception, I like those things, and then that's all that kind of happens.
So John, you're not critiquing me. I literally have told Corey to do that.
Oh.
So this is on Corey. But no, I think it's good, and he's done a good job of quantifying the impacts of the work that he's done.
Yeah, and then like the 22% and the 15%, that's really good. So same thing of like, and now I'm not piling on. I promise. I'm just like continuing.
This is all constructive. No, I don't think anyone's taking offense.
Good, and then if you also notice, like I'm very like I sometimes overly caveat things that I don't consider that a weakness. I consider it neutral to a slight strength. It means like even in a team setting, if team members are presenting, I'm going to be very thoughtful of like which feedback should I give in which settings, and it's very important to like you never want to cut people down, especially in something that they've worked very hard on, and nor is there any reason to cut you down here. But they're like so use data insights to increase efficiencies with inventory on hands, leading to 22% increase in shelf availability. So if I'm looking at like increased shelf availability by 20%, 22%. If it's my resume, I might only say that, but I don't know. I'm a little rusty, and like as you continue advancing, how you get jobs might change a little bit. But yeah, just put the 22. Sorry, I'm being repetitive, but like put the 22% up front, and almost if you want, like you could just say increased shelf availability by 22%. Don't even say how. Let them ask you in the interview. They're going to want to know. If you just have home run, double, triple, home run, you don't have to have too much more. They're going to want to know.
Well, and that also gets into an interview tactic that Jeremy, we talked about this earlier on in the week of get your story structured and straight. The STAR method works great. Also, like the why statement for tell me about yourself works great because it puts guardrails on your answer. So you don't go down a rabbit hole that you are like super nerding out on that the interviewer doesn't care about. You like lay it out and then let them ask questions and then go down the rabbit holes that advance the conversation in a way that they find compelling.
Yeah, definitely so. It's all about reining in the nerd. As
right.
As analysts, we make our career off of getting nitty gritty into the data and really becoming subject matter experts in that. And on that same vein, when you spend enough time in something, in a data set and a dashboard, then you want to publicize it to the world because you want them to see everything that all the beauty in it that you see from it. But come interview time, it's a different ball game about speaking to that high level and only speaking to the high level.
Gotcha. All right. Well.
Okay. Sorry to kill as well, and I know we're running out of time. So the other thing to think about.
You want me to pull the resume back up?
Oh no, we're good. Okay. We're good. The other thing that always makes people's heads explode that shouldn't is how much time have you spent thinking about what the hiring manager actually wants? So even if you're considering a management role, it's probably a senior manager or director, and it's likely someone who's led a team or multiple teams before. Now, you don't have to explicitly tell them, I think I know what you want. That's presumptuous and probably not true, but you should spend a good amount of time thinking about it and wondering ahead of time what might they want? What are they looking for? And then you can even start to you don't want to tell them, but you could say, thinking like one day, maybe I'm leading a team or maybe I get to hire the first like person going from individual contributor to manager. And when I was thinking about that, I really would want like, that's actually not a great way to say that, but think about what they want. They want someone who can join the team fit in with the culture, invest in the people on the team, and get more of the desired results sooner, and maybe surprise them and unlock some new opportunities they weren't yet thinking about. Like we don't want too much.
No, I think the piece of advice that I was talking about of like putting frames on your answers, like you're absolutely right. You can't read their mind, but you can read them conversationally about what are they asking about. Oh, that's what they care about. And then you because you might misread the situation and talk. Like, for example, German, you've got some massive wins. When we talked about the open-ended questions, you got really specific about things that were like,
oh, yeah, he froze.
No, he has to take a second to think about it.
Someone please screenshot him frozen in that. Yeah.
Well, while John David thinks about it, actually, funny enough, one of the things that I kind of helped to help guide or rein in the nerd when I was in the interview for the management position, it was I just up front and asked, like, regarding this role, what's the vision for the company within the next few years, and how is this role intended to help this company meet the vision? And that one, it sparked the recruiter was very happy with that question. And secondly, it gave a lot of good insight for how the rest of the conversation should be framed. So although I did give some foresight beforehand about like what it is that they're hiring this role for, I think up and asking during the interview definitely helped for my own sake.
Did I just freeze out?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you looked on your LinkedIn messages, you will see.
Okay. It went on black, and I'm glad that you guys picked up the slack. You guys are champs. The real heroes here.
It was your turn to start thinking.
Oh, so I froze just like how Richard said. I don't know.
Yeah.
My internet's strong. That's weird. But cool. All right. So, John, I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's coming right at 5 p.m. So I appreciate you coming on. This is super valuable. And just like having the students get to ask you questions directly. I know, well, number one, I know they get a ton of value out of just hearing it directly from the source. But then also too, like to Richard's point, like coming on the podcast and like getting seen having these conversations, I think is a confidence builder. So thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And also all the students on, you guys are awesome. I appreciate you're making this like so enjoyable for me.
Yeah, that's an impressive way to spend a Friday afternoon. all the alternatives, and then John David, if you don't mind, just if you like, go into YouTube and type in Simon Sinek just cause,
Okay.
and like just go watch it and compare it to, and like ask yourself, what do I care about most, and how might this framework be helpful to me, or not, or go.
Yeah, no, I really like his why statement stuff. So yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
Awesome. I'm not necessarily telling. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm inviting your
everyone.
To do that.
Yes,
you're welcome to too, but I would not be that prescriptive with you. You're good, but they're like go figure out what you care about the most, and that will help inform how, like, it might help change which companies you apply to, right? It might make you think a little bit differently how you approach the role. So I have to just like slip into advice mode.
John, that's literally why you're here. We want all the advice from you we can get.
Yes. So go do that. But it's just for people who are motivated like me. I bet you won't go do that. For people who are motivated by obligation, promise the person next to you to go do that. For people who are motivated differently, I'm not sure what to tell you. You could do it if you want.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's right at 5. So let's close this bad boy out. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody in the live chat for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week. See ya.
See ya.
All right.